You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast.
Good morning, or evening, or afternoon, whoever, wherever, or whenever you may be. I almost flubbed that. Welcome back to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Dante.
And I'm the other host, and my name is Merle.
And we're here as we are every week to talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting, and telling stories born from it.
That's right.
Okay. We are on episode 49.
Oof.
This season ends on 50. We're getting pretty close.
We're feeling the end approaching. I mean, I am. I can't talk for you, but...
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. Season 4 is 10 episodes long. That's how we planned it.
Mm-hmm.
We've done like 14 episode long seasons in the past.
Yeah.
And now we're shortening it down to 10, doing one topic per episode. But it doesn't feel like our episodes are any less full of content.
I was thinking about that too.
I'm not really lacking anything with these.
Which is good.
Episodes.
You know, we're fine-tuning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a growing process, but I think this season in particular has been wonderful because, and I wanted to say that today, I just remembered, we finally passed, I'm being a little confident there. We officially
You can be confident.
We officially passed 5,000 listens.
Hey!
Ain't that crazy?
Applause! Applause from the audience. Yeah!
Applause. My noise remover will drown out the sound of the clapping, but it's fine.
Worth it.
Listen, when we started this a year and 3 months ago, I didn't think we would have like more than 10 listeners.
No.
I'm gonna be,
And we do, like, a lot more.
yeah. Not that I didn't think like people would listen, but I'm like, oh, if we have like 15, 20 regular listeners, that'd be cool.
But it wasn't the point.
Neat,
also, so
even.
we were just we were just vibing, and then also people were listening to whatever we're doing.
Yeah, and people just kind of show up, and it's wonderful. It's been such a ride. So to anyone listening, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for hanging around. Yeah, it's so fun.
How has your week gone? What's been the updates this week?
So I was editing the 47th episode yesterday, right?
Sure.
And then I heard myself say in the intro, I'm doing pretty good. There's no crazy scheduling happening. I'm not tired. Well, not anymore. There's some crazy scheduling happening. I don't have weekends anymore. I've been applying together with Cherry, actually, the one who came to our podcast also in a guest episode a while back. And we're sort of starting a art collective to be able to apply to a lot of open calls and stuff. And there's been a lot of open calls all ending kind of in this weekend. Somehow all the open calls are in the end of February. I don't know why. Or it's because I started looking and then suddenly they all appeared and they were like, hey, apply to me. And we're all ending in the same weekend. Well, that weekend was last weekend.
Amazing.
So I'm pretty hammered. Yesterday, I was supposed to just work for half a day and I barely got it through for my part-time job.
Of course.
So I'm going to need some rewinding, but, you know, it's also nice because it feels ultra productive and, you know, kind of the sprint of working is really nice. But it's a bit of a balance that I'm famously not good at. In case you were here before, you've heard this a million times from me.
For all of you regular listeners who are entirely used to our terrible scheduling and inconsistent sleep schedules, this is par for the course. But I mean, I'm happy for you. That sounds sick.
Thanks.
Is it like applying to colleges in which you can kind of copy paste a lot of things for multiple applications, or do you have to customize it individually for every single application?
A little bit of both, depending on what it is, right? Sometimes it's in residency, which is a sort of program that funds you for working on site for 1 or 2 weeks or something, or longer sometimes.
Right.
Usually it has a specific theme, or sometimes it has kind of a home assignment to be able to judge if they like you for this program, kind of. Sometimes it's very easy. For instance, we did a magazine submission that was just send in your portfolio, and if we like you, we'll give you an assignment. And this is the deadline.
Awesome.
So then you don't really have to do anything because your portfolio, you know, you can kind of keep using it for different things. And sometimes it's making entirely new work and pitching a new work to whatever magazine or something it is. And then you really need to do the work because the pitch got to be good. So it really depends. But you can reuse some here and there. And depending on what it is, it's easier or a bit more work. But we'll see. We'll see where that ends up.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think it's going to go great.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm realizing from at least this year, maybe I'm just more aware of it, but a lot of things in February are particularly targeted towards the start of projects.
Yeah.
So like casting calls for acting. There's Zine Month for TTRPGs, which is like everybody's pitching their new idea, starting crowdfunders, Kickstarters. It's all happening here in this month, so it can kind of feed into the summer months and all that nonsense. So like, yeah, I mean, that sounds like what
it's part of that list.
Right?
Yeah.
Now we're learning.
Yeah.
So that sounds awesome.
What have you been up to?
Mostly just trying to keep up with
Also
with
important.
my YouTube channel, and just keeping up with friends and stuff. Finding the balance of time has been really tough. But yesterday we had a day off, and it's been amazing to just have a list of 10 little things and just check off the little things one by
that's so
one.
Satisfying. Yes, I love that.
Like the big projects still kind of loom, but when you get all the
Yeah, but
tiny
it's just
things
the fuzz out of the
postponed.
way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No more noise.
It's a very unhealthy habit that I have of like, oh, I'm just going to finish this video project. Should be around 2-3 hours, right? And I'll do all the little things afterwards, right? But then that 2-hour project becomes 4 hours, becomes to go to sleep and wake up, and another 3 hours. And suddenly all the little things start piling up.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So,
Yep.
I got a whole lot of them out of the way. My room, if you can tell from the webcam, is clean.
So
Audio
clean.
listeners, you'll just have to believe me, trust me here.
Trust
that
my
it's
words.
cleaner than
I
it
can
usually
see it,
is.
and it's real. It's actually real, you guys. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Amazing.
Cool.
Doing good. Okay, that sounds really good.
Yeah, I think we're both on kind of a home stretch towards the end of February, and then we'll have the season finale, which will be fan prompts. Look forward to episode 50, where we're going to
Very
tackle
exciting.
your ideas again. And then we'll take a little bit of time off and re-catch up with life again. And month will be kind of the recuperation phase of
Basically, yeah.
us. So thank you again for tuning in. And if you don't mind, I think we're going to jump into our topic. Is that all right?
I'm very ready. Let's go.
Awesome. Okay, so today, for my last topic of the season, I have a big topic lined up for us. Some might even say gigantic topic. So today,
No
for
pressure,
episode
dude.
49, and the last topic of season 4, I want to talk about giants.
Aha.
A big topic, a big old topic.
I get the joke. It's a good
We
one.
love it. We love a little pun at the start of the
Giants.
episode. Giants, yeah.
Damn.
So I got a lot of thoughts on these, but they're mostly just fun little thoughts and not like insightful philosopher quotes. But speaking of philosopher quotes, I have one to open up this topic.
Oh, amazing.
This is from Solinus, a Greek historian from the early years of AD. Before there were any humans on Pallene, the story goes that a battle was fought between the gods and the giants. Traces of the giants' demise continue to be seen to this day. Whenever torrents swell with rain and excessive water breaks their banks and floods the fields, they say that even now in gullies and ravines, the people discover bones of immeasurable enormity, like men's carcasses, but far bigger. Now, giants show up in like a whole lot of folklore, and there's a reason for that. Paleontologists trace the origins of these massive beings to the discovery of dinosaur bones. And when they find these dinosaur bones and they don't know what dinosaurs are, they attribute it to an ancient people.
Oh, that's
right?
cool. I didn't think of that.
And basically anything that doesn't resemble a human, they're like, oh, that was just, the tusks of a giant, right?
Obviously.
That's how it happened. So, but like tapping into the mythology, giants are often the massive beings that predated humans on this planet and fought with the gods. Like there was, I believe the lore of Greek giants is that they were born of 2 Greek gods and are often in conflict with Olympians, which are like demigod humans. They're like the classic massive antagonists, right? You could see even in like Nordic folklore, in Norse mythology, they even predate the gods. They were the original denizens of this planet well before anyone ever got here. And all throughout these different mythologies and different cultures, obviously because bones are everywhere and it's very easy to, think about a very big being. They're so prevalent. They're almost rivaling dragons in terms of how global their mythos land. And whether it be like in the form of Yetis, Sasquatches, Cyclops, just giants in general, the idea of titans existing, like all of that is, people attribute the eruptions of volcanoes to giants. The massive storms are the winds blown by their mouths. It's just to imagine a worldly force almost separate from the gods that is mountainous and mighty is such an evocative idea. And today we're going to delve into both like world building and storytelling. What does it mean to have a giant in your setting? And what does it mean to have a giant in your story? And what can you attribute to that? I guess I wanted to ask you, I guess we could open this up. Do you know if any like folklore from your country or hometown, does that ever tie into giants? Can you think of anything like off the top of your head? I have like American folklore in my head. Like I have Paul Bunyan, big dude from the Midwest, western side of big dude. That,
giants, just big dudes. You heard it here.
Do you know what Paul Bunyan is?
No, I have no idea. Please elaborate.
Paul Bunyan, he truly is.
Is he just a real person that's just really big?
He's like 40 feet tall. He's just a big dude.
Oh.
Him and his big blue cow that I can't think of.
But is this a fairy tale thing? What? He has an equally blue cow?
It's American folklore.
Interesting.
Not equally blue. He's not blue himself. But
I mean equally big. I said blue, but I meant
he's
big.
often depicted having this massive, like, checkered button down. He's got this big old axe over his shoulder. I sent a picture to you. And he's got his big blue boar, and he just does things. He's just a big old dude.
Wow, that's the most American thing I've ever seen. What the fuck?
Like, look at this guy just carrying his big old tree. I'm just sending pictures.
My God.
Anyone listening to this podcast, I'm just on Paul Bunyan Google, and you just scroll down and see his this
is so Gravity
plaid
Falls
shirt.
too. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's our giant.
Yeah. Wow.
That's our lore.
God, I'm thinking so hard. I don't know if I don't even know what Dutch folklore is. Like, I never thought about this in my life. I feel like it's more, I guess, the more closely related to either the sort of Scandinavian side of things or the German side of things with like dark grim tales and stuff. It's not like we have a lot of mountains and stuff. So like literally none. I can imagine that if our country is the flattest country in the world, which it probably is, it might not be like as interesting to imagine a giant in there. Like, if you have giant trees or giant volcanoes, it feels really necessary and logical to also have a giant, population of beings that are just hanging out on there.
Totally valid.
Does that make sense? I don't know.
I guess. Yeah, they don't have anywhere to hide. So Holland would be a bad place for them.
We would see them from miles away. It would be so obvious if they exist.
After this podcast, we'll look up giants in the Netherlands and see if there's anything that comes up.
Yeah.
But yeah. I love them. As someone who plays a lot of tabletop RPGs, medieval fantasy, giants are like my go-to. They're sick. I very much enjoy the lore of D&D giants, which is, I believe, Annam the Allfather had children with a mountain, and he had kids who were giants.
Wow. So extra.
Yeah. So his
were
kids
they half
were like,
mountain, half kids?
They were tall. They were big kids. I think Adam was some sort of god, and he's just like, I will marry this mountain, and they will have my kids. And the children are like, all different elements. There's the frost, the fire, the storm, cloud, hill, stone. Is that all 6? I don't know, but like,
sure,
they're sick, and they all have their hierarchies and their rules and stuff like that. And if you ever need someone to be threatening, if you ever need a villain that the players will look at and be like, hey, that's a bad guy. Definitely a bad guy. It's a giant. You could go dragon too, but giant is like the next one down,
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
You talked about Yetis and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just the size that makes something or some monster a giant? For me, a Yeti is maybe more monster than giant, Like, where's the line here?
That's fair. Well, I think they're, at least in D&D, right? Trolls are still considered giants. Ogres are still considered giants. Cyclopses are still considered giants. So there's that line where they're almost monstrous, but not quite.
Yeah.
I don't think a Yeti is a giant. I think that's just a straight up monster. But it's like big. Sure. It's big and scary, and like it's a giant creature, but not necessarily a giant. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can tackle this from like a world building standpoint first and foremost, right? If you've got a giant in your setting, 1, where do you put it? And 2, why is it there? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Good question. I feel like for me, the most interesting part about something being so ridiculously large that it becomes its own category is that you also need equally ridiculously large things in your world building. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, if you have a volcano, that's really hard to get if you're like in 1200 and you don't understand how science works. A volcano is like something from the heavens or something. Like, it's so scary. Like, it's basically liquid fire, right? Like, how can you explain that? Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that all the things that are very epic in a way, very epic and hard to grasp, and maybe too large for us puny humans to kind of grasp, that you attribute that to something that's bigger than us that has a different perspective on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's also how the D&D giants work a little bit, like with all the categories, the storm giants and the thunder giants or whatever they are. That's probably not a thing because you're laughing at me. But I mean, those are kind of attributed to those elemental things, right? Or to the large, important settings, I guess, or locations in your world.
Of course.
So, I mean, it needs to be really big wherever they're hanging out. What fascinates me most about it is that the whole sizing, like, it's not human sized. And that's, of course, the whole point of it. But that means that you're going to traverse that whole place so differently. It's kind of like the cliche Alice in Wonderland, right? Where everything's small and suddenly like a table leg becomes a thing to climb instead of to just not consider at all. The play with size there. I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I feel like if you have giants in your setting, you have to give them a place to live, right?
Yeah.
Giants in D&D are denoted by where you can find them. Like the hill giants are obviously hidden in the hills, stone giants in more cliff sides. You got the frost giants in the icy mountains, and you have the fire giants and the volcanoes. Then there's the cloud giants up in the sky because the sky is big enough for giants, you know.
Sure.
And then the storm giants are found in the ocean with the hurricanes and stuff. So you kind of pair them with an equally disastrous setting, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a giant in many medieval fantasy settings necessitates a dangerous place, right? There's no like, hey, visit this humble home over on Grove Street and you'll find a giant. You know, that's not really how it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Approaching a giant demands, or just having a giant exist in a habitat implies that there are 1, things that can feed it, 2, a place big enough to house it, and then 3, a purpose for it being there, which is either to simply exist or to protect something or to watch over something or to, you know, command its territory. Because in fantasy, like, height makes might, so to speak. You know, the bigger they are, the more powerful they are, right? There's almost always a direct correlation between the size of something and its strength. So to have a giant in your setting kind of fills in the blanks of dangerous spaces. You know, a giant kind of implies danger, which is pretty neat.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
For sure. And it's also worth thinking about how you, in terms of balance, keep them healthy in your world. Because if something's very big and it eats a lot, it easily kills a bunch of stuff or, you know, rips out a tree from the ground. It's going to wreak a lot of havoc and it's going to eat a lot of animals in your world or, you know, humans. I don't know how giants work. So you need to either think of it in a sort of territorial way, maybe that they only are in a specific area there, such as, you know, what you said, I already forgot. What's this called? Storm giant? Yes, storm giants. Like, why would they not take over your entire world? If they're so big, like one step of their foot can, you know, break a village. So why aren't all your villages broken is my question, right? And I think if you tie it to something natural that only exists in a certain place, that's a very good way to do it. But there might be other versions of this. I also saw, for instance, on the very lovely animated series, and I think it's also a graphic novel now, Hilda. It's also based on a lot of Scandinavian folklore. It's sort of a little girl exploring with her Girl Scout squad, the sort of magical world that she's in. And there, the idea of giants is really cool because there it's more like a roaming thing. So you can see them in the distance.
Oh, cool.
Little spoiler, you later learn that one of the mountains was a giant just waiting for so long that, you know, it's kind of turned into a static mountain.
Huh.
Only later we realize, oh, it was actually a giant waiting all the time for their mate, I think it was. So if it's a roaming thing, if it doesn't really belong anywhere, it can have a place, but then that needs to be its culture, or maybe it doesn't like humans, so it just stays out of the way. There's all kinds of ways you can go with this. I mean,
there is precedent for gentle giants, right? We think of whales that exist today. We think of like the Brontosaurus or Apatosaurus from prehistoric times. Like herbivoric creatures like exist, and they're not necessarily dangerous, but it's the what's the word? I'm clamping my hands like a crab because I'm trying to look for the word there. It's the
Thanks for this visual reference. It was worth it.
They claim space.
Yeah.
They demand space, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever they are, people know, right? It's like they're like walking landmarks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty hard.
So I guess that leads pretty well into how you use them in stories. Their storytelling utility, so to speak. Obviously, we can say that if a giant exists, the mythos follows them, that they are dangerous, they shouldn't be meddled with, you got to stay clear from them. you know, all the things you tell your kids that they will eventually, if they're the main character, confront this giant, you know?
Right.
Something that is almost tragic, and I wanted to bring it up in this podcast, is that a giant is rarely the main character, you know?
Oh.
Like, I can't recall, and please correct me, unless we're talking about like the Iron Giant, and he's not even a main character. He's just like, you know, he's like a side character, not a side character, but he's like the secondary character. It's hard to make a story about somebody who's already visibly very powerful, right? Where do you grow as a giant? And in the Iron Giant, he learned peace. He learned pacifism, so he could like exist with people. But he was naturally perceived as a danger, so he had to come to grips that he could deal massive amounts of damage, but he wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's kind of the learning lesson.
That's nice.
They are inherently equipped with this great power that is understood not only by them, but by everyone else. Right? So it's so much easier in 99% of stories to set them up as the villain because their power is implied. And to defeat them, to best them, is an extraordinary feat that we usually leave to the protagonist, you know?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I didn't really think about that before. It's very true. And I think, again, it's also a thing of perspective. The fact that we call them giants, that's really a human term. Would ants call me giant? Basically, they would.
Probably.
You know, I'm probably a giant in the ants main character story, right?
Sure.
Because I kill them all the time. Accidentally, with my
whoa.
walking.
You can't just admit to murder on a podcast. We have a reputation to uphold.
Sorry, all the ants who are listening.
Listen,
I'm sorry for stepping on you.
I checked the demographics. 70% of our listeners are ants.
Shit, I ruined it. We were so close to finishing. Well, that was it for today. No. But I think of all these like heroic fantasy stories, and you got the 5-man party. How often is there a giant? Not really that often, because it's really hard. It ruins the perspective of any like clear shot that you want. It's completely unpractical. Yeah, they can never enter a tavern door ever.
Whenever you want to take that super cool hero shot, the giant's way too big. Like they resort to using characters like Ant-Man who get really big, but can be small if they want to.
Right.
But you never have just a 15, 20 foot tall dude traveling around with you because it becomes a fulcrum of your story to have that you have this giant with you, you know?
I mean, I feel, now that I'm thinking, I think there are a few stories that do it. I was thinking of the Big Friendly Giant, obviously, where the main character is, I think Sophie is her name, or Sophia. And, you know, they're very much big and small. They're pretty out of perspective. We don't follow the giant necessarily, but we follow Sophie, I think.
Right, yes.
But still, they're kind of two main characters, right? They're sort of the heroic duo of the story. And I was also thinking of the movies of Kung Fu Panda, where it's not necessarily a giant, but there is the mantis dude who is super small.
Sure.
But then somehow he does get his really cool kung fu kicks in, which I think is very nice. Like somehow they made it work, even though this character is way smaller than all the others because all the others are more tiger and panda sized, I guess. So if you change the balance to where a lot of characters have different heights and stuff, if you have a very colorful, very much out there party, it might work out. But yeah, it's a bit tricky. And depending on your world too, right? If your world is filled with very small creatures that have equal say and very large creatures that have equal say and equal amounts of, you know, civilization built on your world, etc., then it's much less of a problem because taverns that want to cater to as many people as possible will make big enough doors, right?
That's true.
If like half of the population is giant and half of the population is ants, then, you know, there might be an ant-specific tavern that's very tiny, but, you know, everything else will kind of adjust to it as well.
Yeah, we could just look at our lives and be like, hey, where the human population is basically giants to ants, and look how we've formed our world to fit our giant nature.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's very tricky to have giants in your stories because they're often over-centralizing from not only a visual standpoint, but from like a power standpoint. And the problem, what I would imagine is the trickiest part of imagining a giant as the main character is that the protagonist is supposed to be relatable to the reader, right? So whenever you have somebody so strange and so ridiculous, it's very hard to relate to the problems of a giant because not everybody is 20 feet tall, you know? You kind of have to aim for the introspective nature of it. Like what kind of human-like qualities can we relate to in the form of this story? It's not unusual to have like a strange character as the main character, but an empathetic character is kind of where you got to approach this.
Yeah, I agree. And also the strength in portraying giants lies also in that we don't really know a lot about them. I remember you talking about the whale, right? Or the, you know, the giant creatures in our world, the ones that still exist.
Yeah.
If we want to visit a whale, in the most basic sense of this example here, we have to get to their world and the environment that they're thriving in, basically the sea, which we are dying in if we didn't have all this equipment that we built for years. We feel very out of place in their home, right?
That's fair.
The other way around, they would feel very out of place in our world. So they don't come, obviously, because they would probably die.
I don't know if it's a preference thing. Yeah, I don't know if it's a preference thing.
Maybe
that
it's just a keeping alive thing. Yeah. But the fact that we have to visit them on their terms is something very mystical, pretty magical, or very estranging kind of in an interesting way. In terms of storytelling, I think meeting someone at their terms is very interesting as a character portrayal. And if we would have the main character be the one in the water, the whale in this case, that wouldn't happen because the hometown is the sort of basis that your story will be in. The sea will be just the sort of default in that case. So it also changes the dynamic of how you interact with the giant, because the more we feel empathetic towards them, the less giant they also feel. We, as humans, don't consider ourselves giants because we're so egocentric. We only see things from human perspective. So, of course, we're not giants, we're the default. But if, everything was based and made around creatures that were as small as ants, we would be super out of place. We would never consider ourselves the default. That's not how it works. But because, we overtook this world, and I don't want to go there, but that's a different conversation. But, the perspective is really all that informs us about how we should call other beings. And in the case of giants, if literally their trait is to be other and larger than life, that would be missed if we would see it from their perspective.
Yeah.
Because then they would just be characters, like any other character.
That was a fantastic point. The giants by nature are exceptional. There's no such thing as an unexceptional giant. And the fact that they are incredible is part of their identity, which makes them...
It's literally in the name, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult for them to be the underdogs. It's difficult for them to be a relatable point for the eyes of the reader. Yeah, that's a fantastic centerpiece for this whole conversation.
And it opens up a lot of different things too, right? If you build a sort of classic giant society, I guess, in your world, D&D style, right, where they're pretty scary, they're more evil than they're good, they don't consider other beings too much, they're in their own kind of territorial area, you might die from meeting them, that kind of setup. And then if you introduce a giant that doesn't do that is actually really friendly, or that is very bad at hitting things, or that is accidentally very smart and knows the human language very well. I don't know. If you change up the dynamic that you introduce them as, suddenly you can actually let your readers question what a giant is. Would we still consider it a giant if we, become really good friends with this nice one, the singular nice one in this field of evils? It's kind of the How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
We start the story with dragons are evil. They're cool, but they're so evil and we need to kill all of them. And then Hiccup, the main character, finds Toothless, who is a dragon that is kind of nice. Not at first, but they have a bit of a scuffle. But, they become very good friends. We learn through storytelling, through the plot continuing, we learn that dragons can be friendly. And then suddenly our definition is kind of expanded.
Yeah, that's exactly that, which is fantastic. And I think we're going to take that. We're going to hold on to it. And I think it's a perfect segue.
Hold it tight.
For a prompt. And I'm going to toss it to you. And it's basically what we've been talking about for the past however long this podcast has been going. The only prompt that I have for you is describe a giant protagonist. The main character is a giant. That's it.
Okay.
So we've talked about why it's difficult. We've outlined why this is difficult. But now
we know why this is a hard prompt. Great. Now we're going to do it.
We know why it's a hard prompt, and now it's time to tackle it. So if you have any ideas, we can brainstorm.
Okay.
Think this through.
It's buzzing. I want to say, I can go two ways with this, right? It can either be like a sort of Little Mermaid. Oh, I don't belong in this world, but look at all these cool humans that are around. Or like Wicked style, right? Where suddenly a human is born and it's not really human. It's more witch than human. It's more giant than human. But then it lives in this world and it's, all its friends are humans and stuff. And it just feels really out of place. That could be a thing.
I think you're discussing Clifford the Big Red Dog.
I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, he's a giant. Isn't he a giant? Is he a dog? Is he a giant?
He's both.
Well, dude. Okay.
Well,
dude. I would say, let's flip this on its head a little bit. I would say our main character comes from a population of giants, so does not live in the human world. Humans are around. They're, in this story, very distant, like the giant population that is the focus of the story knows about them, but kind of goes them out of the way. They know they're a bit, morally ambiguous, like all the time. So they're like, let's not, we're fine in our little corner of the world. Let's just not interact with them at all. Then we don't need them. And then one, I would say, quite young giant teen. I guess it's a teen.
Teen giant.
Is it a coming of age? I don't know. I'm always going there somehow. Give him a name. Dante, what's his name?
Oh my gosh. Give me a letter. Tossing it back to you.
P.
P? Oh no. There's only a couple days coming to me. His name is Petrie.
Petrie. Which is super funny, considering I only think of Petrie like in microscopic sense, but cool. Okay, Petrie, the teen boy giant.
Teen
is that the
boy
title?
Giant.
No, that's awful.
The title in
I'm
progress.
trying to keep going here, but it's okay.
Work in progress title.
My brain
We're
is giving me
workshopping
like
it.
brain farts. Yes,
The
yes,
teen boy
yes.
giant.
Yes, exactly. It's a workshop. Petrie, the teen giant, always, every day from school that they definitely have, walks home with giant steps, the earth quaking under their feet.
Mm-hmm.
But, they don't know any better. This is how all the giants walk. And also, there's not a lot of other things around. They have wildlife, they have forests and stuff, but, they're not very impressive for a giant. We think they're cool and stuff, but they can't come to ground level and experience all the wonderful birds whistling. They're high up in the sky, So
They're
Petrie's
too high
just...
for birds?
Yes, I established this now.
Spoken into canon.
It's real. I yes-ended it. Petrie's walking home.
I did.
Every day he looks at the fence, the very, very high wooden stakes and bricks fence that's around this entire encampment of the giants. And he wonders what's out there. They're telling him, yeah, there's others around there, but they don't like us. They always pick fights with each other and it's get real messy. And, the ground's littered with swords. It's a bit annoying to walk there and stuff. So let's just get them out of the way. You don't need anything else but our little area here. And Petrie's kind of unsatisfied. He's getting curious and more curious every single day. And in school, he learns about all these stuff, all these phenomena, these natural phenomena that occur, like storms and volcanoes, wars of little unimportant beings. Is that in his history books? Yeah, it is. Somehow they know about it. So he gets more and more curious about that world that's out there, and he wants to know what it is to not be around giants all the time. Sometimes he sees a bird flying in the sky. He wonders how something so little can be so alive. One day, after his last day on school for that week, he decides to walk just a little bit slower. He comes closer and closer to the fence, and he looks out and sees if there's anybody guarding it. And I guess there's no one. So he walks out. Yeah, it's plot.
He just leaves.
Because it is, yeah. Our little naive Petrie the teen giant walks out of the giant encampment. And suddenly he finds all sorts of interesting things. He finds tiny little bear creatures that are very aggressively, sticking their paws in rivers and eating even smaller creatures from that river. He finds a lot of square-looking areas that turn out to be villages for very small people. The first time he sort of leans forward and looks with one eye through a little window on the top floor of a building. He's like, wow, I can't believe they hid this from me. This is so lovely. Suddenly, the air is sort of pierced with screams. Tiny little screams, but screams. And he sees how people come out of their houses with like spiky things and with fire, people screaming and rallying. And at first he's very confused. He's like, is this the wars that I've heard about? How did this start all of a sudden? Very soon after, he realizes that it's not just them, it's actually their reaction to him. And he's like, wait, but I just wanted to look into your little house. People are throwing sticks of fire on them. People are throwing like pitchforks. It's very unfriendly. So he's like, this is not really nice. I'm gonna like head over here. He has this experience a couple more times. He sort of starts to realize the giants from his village were kind of right, and that the humans really aren't that friendly to them. I'm not really sure where I'm ending up here.
It's okay.
Let me think. The
prompt isn't to end the story. The prompt is just to make a main character.
But I want him to have a good ending.
Oh, listen, this is
Petrie.
episode 49. You could do it. If you want
Oh my God.
if you want to finish it.
Like I want to. Okay, give me some ideas here.
Okay. He either there's two branches here. He either goes through his villain arc and then realizes that he becomes the monster everybody thinks he is and starts destroying things, and then has a change of heart and returns and, learns his place in the world. Or he has a little sidekick who teaches him the meaning of being good, and someone who doesn't see him as a monster, but someone who can befriend him,
Okay, yes, here we go. Petri goes to village after village, and every time he thinks, maybe they're friendly here. Maybe I can finally just ask them how they do it all the time. But they keep throwing stuff at him, and he keeps being set on fire. And it's really, really not nice. So at some point, he just sort of sticks to the forest because, it's the only place that the people will sort of leave him alone or won't see him, One day when he's very tired and he's sort of regretting a little bit that he walked away from home, and he's like, I'm not sure if I belong in this world. Maybe they were right. And he sits down, huddles together to go to sleep. He sees a tiny little creature in a tree, like I guess a very tall tree, that he wanted to go to sleep next to. And he sees a small little girl with a small little short bow on her shoulder, acrobatically sitting on one of the top branches of this tree. And she's just looking at him. And she's not doing anything. She's just looking at him. And he's like, excuse me? Can I just have one moment without people throwing sticks at me? And she's like, are you real? And she's just very curious. She wants to talk with him, and they realize they have the same language. And finally he knows, because before he just heard screams and like, get him, and the evil has returned and stuff. So he's like, well, what are you doing in this tree? Don't you need to go to like your human villages and stuff? And don't you need to like prepare sticks for anyone who you don't like and then throw them at beings? And she's like, well, no, I kind of was fed up with that, so I just went here. This is very good. And before they know it,
this is very good.
Yes, I'm just manifesting it. Maybe it works. And before they know it, I'm going to round this off because it's very long. Before they know it, they become very good friends and finally find in each other the escapism they were all longing for all along.
Oh, there you go. Very good.
Did I do it? I'm not sure.
I love the 5 minutes into telling your story. This is very good.
Just, so that you're aware. Oh my God, this was a struggle. But, we got there, I guess.
I like it. I'm endeared to Petri the giant, the teen boy giant.
Yeah, those famous teen boys we all empathize with.
My favorite detail had to have been he walks up to the very tall gate. No one is guarding it, so he leaves.
Yes. This is how you storytell, folks.
Yeah.
This is how you do it.
He just left through the door.
Yeah.
I thought when you implied a very tall gate, I'm like, oh, he's going to scale it. Oh, he's going to break through it. No, he just walks through the unguarded
I did imply
door.
that, and then I didn't use it. This is the power of prompts. It
so
results
funny.
in questionable storytelling.
Well,
ta-da!
Well, listen, guys, that's all the time we have for today.
Woo! Ended with a banger.
Listen, this is again the last topic of season 4. Join us next week as we answer your prompts. I will say that by the time this releases, I will have already asked for prompts and we'll already go through it. But
still,
join us for episode 50, big ol' 50. Can you believe we've recorded 50 episodes? That's ridiculous.
So many episodes.
That's so much time.
So many episodes.
How do we commit so much time to this? Crazy. But listen, I hope you've been enjoying. I don't know when you jumped in, but again, you can watch any of our episodes in any order because
it's true.
There's truly no continuity unless you want to keep up with like our sleeping habit and stuff like that and how we talk about being tired.
I don't know if that's worth it, but
there's like a timeline to that. But if you don't care about that, watch any episode you want in any order.
Yep.
Do enjoy that, but there is one thing consistent with every episode, and it is the topic that we never quite discuss.
Oh, what's that?
I'm pretty sure it's that your rivers are wrong.
My rivers are wrong? Or everyone's rivers?
Well, I think your rivers are wrong.
Everyone who feels attacked by this.
Pretty sure your rivers are wrong.
Will probably have wrong rivers. Yeah.
If you don't think they are, they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that.
And with that, I'll just end the episode. Goodbye. See ya.
See ya. Thanks for
listening.
listening.
That segue. Perfect segue. Goodbye.
Perfect.
Bye.
We're good at this.
We're so good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have ideas for topics, prompts, or you just want to share your thoughts, please reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Also, a big thanks to Maarten Schellekens, who created the intro and outro music for our podcast. And most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to see you at the next one. Bye.